In a world where everyone wants to talk about hybrid, I want to share with you what I've done since 2009, which isn't hybrid, but actually the transition from that environment to a completely different way of working, not just for teaching, but actually in the end, we actually moved the entire business away from a sort of traditional environment, which you'd recognize, across to this environment, which is this teaching room, which is actually on QUBE. So let's go and have a look at what we've got here. So our challenge was, as we globalized and as our clients globalized, we had to rebuild our model, which worked really well. Mission of World After Midnight, an ethos of fun and learning, an amazing venue. You've just seen the lovely wooden beams, to an environment which would do all of the things we did, but also be able to work virtually so that people were autonomous, we could keep the laughter and so on. So what's the challenge? Massive. So what did we need to understand quickly? We need to understand how people function within their environments. So what we built up by accident and by happenstance over the previous 30, 40 years was we were good at dealing with simple messages, factual messages, and one-off messages. And for those, we've done things like learn how to do things like send email messages and post-its and so on. The key here is analogs in gray and digitals in green. And then we started thinking, oh, what else could we do? Well, if it gets slightly more complex, the message, well, in that case, what we'll do is we'll have a meeting or we'll have an audio conference call. Yay. What about if it's emotional? Well, if it's emotional, then it gets interesting because the digital solution to that is a phone call. And then we said, okay, well, that's all very well and good. But what happens if it's more than just a one-off thing? What happens if we want people to stay in that environment? So once you start looking at that, you realize that we had built up a whole set of things, notice boards, last forever, Yammer, Twitter. These days, we'd use things like WhatsApp and blogs. We'd probably think about things like greeting cards, which are emotional and give you complexity. And we had things like shared drives. We had the ability to have face-to-face meetings. If it was emotional, complex, and it was one of, so all of those elements were in place. But what we were looking for was something which was persistent, would deal with complexity, could deal with emotional elements, because we wanted to teach. So that's basically what underpins the whole design of QUBE. I love this technology.